Hello and welcome to Tech for Non-Techies, the only podcast that demystifies the fast-growing technology sector. I'm your host, Sophia Matveeva, Chicago-based MBA and tech entrepreneur. My aim here is to give you the skills, knowledge and confidence to find opportunities in the tech sector, whether that's through founding a company, getting a dream job, or bringing a fresh perspective to your work.
Hello, smart people. How are you today? On today's show, I want to continue our tradition of quotes because I like it. So some of you know I am from Moscow and I'm actually going there on Saturday. And that's going to be super fun. And I will be spending time with my mother and my grandmother. And so this week's quote comes from my mother, but I actually think it originated in the Roman Empire. So when I was little, she used to wake me up with the following words. Arise, Caesar, great deeds await you. And with these words, little me would crawl out of bed, eat my porridge, and trot off to kindergarten with the confidence of a very small Roman emperor. So obviously, being woken up with this phrase can lead to megalomania, so you gotta be careful. But honestly, it does also give you a spring in your step. So if you're feeling a bit down and out, then I say to you, arise, Caesar, great deeds await you. And if one of the deeds you are planning on is raising money for a venture as a non-technical founder, then darling, I've got you covered. I'm hosting a small workshop on fundraising for non-technical founders on the 19th of September. This will be online so you can join from anywhere, and I will teach you the system that I used to raise $1 million from investors as a non-technical founder. And I'm going to help you avoid some of the biggest mistakes that non-techies make when they're fundraising, because I've made a lot of them myself. A third of the spots have already sold out. So if this sounds interesting to you, then sign up literally as soon as you hear this. The link is in the show notes, or you could just go to techfornontechies.co/fundraising-workshop. That's techfornontechies.co/fundraising-workshop. In today's episode, you are going to hear from a kick-ass non-technical founder of an AI business. Andi Govindia is the CEO and co-founder of Riviter, a visual search company that works with some of the world's largest beauty brands to predict trends. And I'm sure that some of the stuff in your bathroom right now is actually the result of Andi's work. If you're interested in entrepreneurship and in how non-techies can succeed in tech, this episode is for you. Enjoy.
Hello, Andi.
Hi, Sophia.
Tell us, what do you do right now?
That's a loaded question. I am the CEO and co-founder of a tech startup. So our startup is called Riviter. We use visual and social AI signals to predict demand for brands on social media. So I can look at what's trending based on what people are sharing on Instagram and then tell brands like L'Oreal what to do about it.
So is it basically like you scan the internet and then with that, you work out that in 2 years' time, I will be wearing baby blue?
Exactly. Yes. We're like a crystal ball for brands.
Wow, this is incredible. And who do you work with?
Companies like L'Oreal. A lot of the makeup that you see on shelves has probably been informed by what we're doing for brands.
So this is your fault, basically.
Yes. I take full responsibility and credit.
Okay. So everybody, what you're wearing right now and the products you have in your bathroom, they're probably linked to Andi somehow. So you're a non-technical founder, but this business sounds pretty deep tech. So how does that work?
I have incredible co-founders who are the technical people. So they are PhDs in computer vision, have built the full stack behind it. And I just come with the mouth and I come and connect us with customers, come with the business model. And that's my contribution. So it's in very close partnership with them that we're able to make it work.
So since we have, this is Tech for Non-Techies, so a lot of non-technical founders here. How does the division of responsibility work? Like literally just talk us through. They do this and I do that.
Yeah. So a typical day will usually start with me opening our pipeline. So we are an enterprise software product. So we've got a very kind of direct sales process. So I'm making sure that I'm contacting all of our customers, making sure that I'm keeping the communication open. Anything that leads to them interacting with the software and anything that leads to them going away from the software basically is my responsibility. Now we are co-founders, right? So we do all stay very close to customers equally. And so my co-founders are on the calls with them. They're still interacting with them on a support basis. But basically, if it has anything to do with not the product itself, it's my responsibility.
So would you say that the sales strategy, the marketing strategy, basically getting clients like L'Oreal, that's your job?
That's the biggest part of it. Yes, the sales and customer support is the biggest part of my day. Marketing, where we're able, finance, operations strategy, all of that is opportunistic. We're a really small company, but the sales is the biggest thing.
So this is interesting. And I'm just wondering, what were these brilliant computer science PhDs doing before they met you? So how did this all come together? No, the reason why I'm asking is that, as you know, Andi, and as you know, audience, there are lots of very smart tech people who don't know about marketing and they don't know about sales. So you'll often have people who are actually working on something really interesting, but because they either don't know how to sell, or when they try to explain to you, like I've got some developer friends who get very excited and they start telling me about what they're making, and I'm just thinking, when will this stop? when will they tire out? But then equally on the other side, which I think is probably most of the people in this audience, is we have some idea of the users, we have some idea of the problem, we probably can sell, maybe we need some training, we need a bit of a push, because sales means rejections and nobody likes that. But essentially we know that bit, but we also, if we're going to do something as deep tech as Andy's doing, we do need the technical co-founders. So essentially in your job, who came first, the chicken or the egg? Was it you, was it them, or did you team up? How did it all come together?
If I'm the chicken, then then it was me. You know, it was kind of funny is that they were doing fine without me, right? So they had a business going. They were already licensing their technology. They were already solving a lot of the problems that we solve today, but they didn't love doing the business part of it, right? And it was very distracting. So if you get joy out of spending your whole day coding, then to pick up the phone and talk to a customer is, one, very disruptive to that flow, but then two, maybe not something that you love or want to kind of comprise your whole of the day. And I'm the opposite, right? So I was starting with a lot of discovery, a lot of research, trying to really articulate and identify the need, but I didn't know how to actually go and solve it. So we had actually been trying to solve very similar problems in parallel. And then we were introduced to one another and they said, yes, please take all of this business stuff, all of this interaction, the pricing, the quotes, all of it, take it off of our hands. And I said, please build the solution for which I'm hearing all of these needs for. And so they were very happy to continue going on the way they were, but I think they're even happier now because they get to spend all day doing what they love, and I get to spend all day doing what I love.
So this is really interesting because a lot of people are thinking about, well, how do I find co-founders? And it seemed like this was a match made in heaven. But also what's interesting, which I want to point out, is that essentially would it be right to say that they kind of wanted a boss? Because if you're the CEO, you're the boss, right?
I think they wanted a partner, although I will say, there are times when you do have to make a call, you have to take a risk. And so it is nice to be able to say, oh, well, she said, Andy said we should do this and defer that. But it really does have to be a partnership at the end of the day, because if there's anything that I am deciding to which that they don't know what the basis of that is for, then it's not going to work. They need to know the rationale. They need to understand and feel the need as deeply. What they were looking for is someone who could, take things off of their plate, that both in terms of things that we decided as a business not to do, but then also things that they were overqualified or underqualified for, depending on the domain.
This is really interesting as well. And I want to really dig into kind of how you guys all came to all of this and how you met.
Yes. So my co-founders are Chris Woodbeck and Rachel Chan. So there are two of them. Chris's background is more on kind of the front toward the back end. So actually making kind of the product work and making sure all the analytics go toward it. But he does have an education in computer vision. And then Rachel is really our chief scientist. So she has done decades of research on computer vision itself and make sure that the actual system upon which we rely works and is as accurate as possible. So they're both equal. All three of us kind of, split the company equally. And they spend all of their time making sure magic happens on the back end. But we interact, we're actually a remote team. So we interact pretty much daily. We have weekly stand-up calls on the customer side and then on the product side, and have been working together for 5 years in partnership. So that's our team. Yeah.
And so what's your background, Andi? Because when you're talking about all of this computer vision stuff, this sounds, some people might be thinking like, I don't even know what that is, which is fine. This is Tech for Non-Techies. But is your background anything similar to this?
Not at all. No, I graduated from university. When I went into university, I intended to be a photojournalist / music composer / nonprofit manager. So I really had very little direction. No money.
You just decided
exactly.
I never want to go to Chanel. You thought.
And now I'm a startup founder, so the trend continues. No, it's at the time I had very little direction, but I was in the business school of my university at University of Texas, and through that, as part of the requirements, you go through internships and you start working with companies. One of the ones that I worked with was the technology transfer office of the university itself, and so this is where all of the scientific discoveries and technologies developed at the University of Texas are either licensed to companies to use or spun up through the inventor team as businesses themselves. And this is where I became really interested in saying, there are these incredible scientific minds, incredible discoveries through brilliant people who let's let them keep focusing on those scientific discoveries. But there's this whole other side in order to make sure that a technology or a discovery reaches a human. And that involves business and sales and marketing and service and experience. And that was where, that's where I really want to focus. So after university, I went to work for a large enterprise software company, which, that's everybody's dream, graduating schools to market enterprise software. But nonetheless, it was a hugely valuable experience and gave me exactly what I wanted to do, which was how do I communicate this incredibly complex technical thing to the average person in a way that not only do they understand, but actually feel and associate value with.
That's interesting. I've actually seen a few people go from enterprise software sales to become, to be the business people or to be the CEOs in startups. So I've actually seen this happen a few times. So it does sound like it's a good training ground. And I know that for some of our audience, they're thinking, well, I have several ideas and I don't know which one I want to pick, but I know I want to get into tech and I'm not going to retrain as a coder. And so this enterprise sales work could actually, as an interim job, could be interesting to learn the craft and then set something up on your own. But actually, this is where I want to ask. When you get to this job, you don't, I'm assuming you don't know about technology, but you have to learn. So what kinds of things did you have to learn and how did you have to learn?
I learned everything on the job. And I would say I've met people now who are really gung-ho doing things like Tech for Non-Techies, reading lots of books and trying to brush up as they can. Other than this, there's really not a great formalized way. So otherwise you're just tinkering. And that's kind of the way that techies will say that they do too, right? They take something apart and they kind of poke around. So everything from saying, okay, I'm looking at a website, let me right click and look at source code and just look at the gibberish and start Googling the terms that show up there. So my first job out of school was as a web content coordinator. So I had to learn a little bit of HTML. I had to understand how does what I put into the system show up on the page. And most of us, I think, are going to be users of the end of software in that way, right? So we're interacting with Excel, we're interacting with websites. And just from that very basic interaction to say, I don't know, I want to know more about how this particular thing works. Let me just start looking up and understanding like what goes into making this show up where it is in front of me on a technology basis. And then asking questions and finding people who, as you said, Sophia, people who are developing love to talk about what they're developing. So let them bend your ear and tell you what they're working on, and ask questions. They love to talk about why they're taking one approach or another, or what kind of goes into a technical architecture for them.
Andi, I want to get back to Riviter because I want to understand your journey in setting up Riviter, and especially I want to understand the accelerator journey, because you have been through probably more accelerators than of anybody I know. And there have been some really, really good ones. And I would love to understand. So your funding journey has been different to lots of other people who are literally they just go angel checks and that's it. Whereas you went another route. And I'd really love to explore that with you because I do think it's quite unique. So let's go back to the beginning. How did you meet these co-founders, and how did you begin, essentially, how did you have this partnership, which honestly sounds magical?
It was a bit of magic. It kind of makes it hard to replicate, but I think there are things that everyone can do to kind of happen upon the same happy circumstances. So when I started Riviter, I started only with the identification of a need, right? So I thought, there's this habit that people have, and at that time we were consumer facing, of needing to search for something using a picture. And I knew through my past experience, at least being conversant in technology, that visual search was a thing that was starting to come to maturity. But I spent a year doing research, customer research, understanding what was there in the market on my own, essentially. Went with the idea. Go ahead.
Was this when you were actually working in enterprise software?
No, so actually I had left that.
How did that?
What had happened there was I got to a point in my career there. So it was a really big multinational, large company. And you get to a point where you're the senior something or other, where your whole job is making PowerPoints for executives. I was like, well, that's not my thing. It might be other people's, but I was like, a good day is if I've talked to a customer and if I put something out there in the world that a customer can see. And I'm feeling less and less of that in this enterprise role. So let me go and work for or with a startup. And so with that, I decided to apply for my MBA at Chicago Booth. And it was in my first year that saw this need and started doing the research around it.
Okay, so you were literally in the business school and you were thinking, I'm seeing this need. This is something I want to explore because essentially there might be a business opportunity. But as I've said many times, Chicago Booth, great school, but technology, product development, they missed that bit. You need the word Barack Obama, but not. So you're the business school and you are identifying a need, and then what happens?
Yes. And as was great advice to me when I first started this journey, is that I was talking to everybody I possibly could about what I was working on. And, I think there's a lot of kind of more traditional advice that it's keep your trade secret. But I would advise the opposite, because it was through talking to everybody I knew about, hey, I'm looking to build this at the time an app, that I was introduced to lots of different people who then ultimately led me to the accelerator, which led me to my co-founders. So it was through that process that I was invited to pitch for an accelerator. Had nothing, right? Just had the business plan and the use case, but had no technology whatsoever. Had an idea of how it could be solved and the research and pitch for this. And lo and behold, that accelerator, which was Plug and Play, based in Silicon Valley, picked me to join the accelerator. And they said, you know what, actually, we have a company already in our portfolio who has been solving this problem, but didn't have the same application that you did and could really use a business partner. So they teamed me up with Chris and Rachel, and that's how we became co-founders.
Oh, wow. That is quite magical.
But yeah, I think at that time, my naivety was probably working for me. And I didn't know how little I knew. So I knew that visual search was being applied in manufacturing from my previous job. So Shiner Beer, a bottling company here, would use the cameras to say how full are the beer bottles and then pass them or reject them. So I knew that the technology was already somewhat working and that it could be applied. And I didn't know just how hard it was going to be to actually make it work well. So I decided in kind of naive pursuit to go ahead and look for a solution. And similarly, I didn't know, what was involved in building a business or pitching to an accelerator or prestige. I thought, well, what is there to lose if I go and pitch this idea? The worst that can happen is that I look silly. But Silicon Valley, for all its faults, is built around people looking silly and people pitching crazy ideas. And so thankfully that was rewarded in that particular case.
But Silicon Valley is also kind of anti-non-technical founders. So when you were applying, is that something that you were aware of? Or is that something that you've never really had to deal with, this kind of, I don't know, idea that non-technical founders are kind of these second-class citizens? Or is that not something you ever came across?
I think a lot has changed in the last 5 years. So it didn't even occur to me really that was going to be a fault 5 years ago. Whereas now I probably would hesitate to apply, or I think, I need to find someone first before I start talking to people about what I do. But I think what is still true is don't hesitate to talk to people, right? Because especially if you are a non-technical founder, that is probably universally the way that you are going to find your technical founders, is just through your network and through talking to people. So even though looking back, I don't know that I would do the same thing. I would hope that I would, because that is what helped in the end.
So let's talk about your accelerator. So you then meet these wonderful people through plug and play. And how do you start working together? Because here I want to really drill down into, do you meet each other and then it's like, oh, I love you, and then you just sign equity contracts and you skip into the sunset? Or was there kind of like a courting, dating period?
It was dating, and yeah, not to use the tired analogy, but it was very much dating. You don't want to just jump into marriage before you even meet, and you want to start to get to know, is the way that you look at the world compatible with the way I look at the world? Are the things that you've seen as needs matching with the things that I've seen as needs? And originally we had no obligation to one another, right? We thought, hey, there's this great technology. Maybe Andi can license it with Riviter to start that partnership that way and let it just be a commercial partnership. And through the process of, hey, here's what I'm seeing, I would like, things that could do X, Y, or Z. They wanted to hear more and more about what the customers were saying. They wanted to understand more about where I was seeing needs and where the direction was going. And eventually they just said, well, this is what we would also want to build anyway. We don't want to build anything else. So let's now be officially in partnership together. But that process of vetting each other essentially and vetting the market at the same time, that was probably about a year-long process before we formalized anything involving equity or founder shares.
I want to ask more about accelerators. So you have been through Plug and Play, Founders Factory, the New Venture Challenge at Chicago booth, which is where Grubhub and Braintree came out of. And I know I'm missing a couple as well.
Those are the main ones. Yeah, those are the main ones. There were some that were offshoots after Booth. So one of the investors who had subsidized one of the prizes at Booth had a kind of their own summer equivalent. The Pritzker Venture Group went through that.
So this is interesting. Why is it that you went through the accelerator route as opposed to what lots of startups do, which is basically just try to find angel investors?
Ultimately, it comes down to this thing that many successful entrepreneurs have in common. Not saying I'm one of them, but it's this trait of what is called effectual logic. I don't know if you remember Waverly Deutsch giving us this article.
It's all my problems.
It's basically like how lazy are you? It's how much are you willing to find a shortcut to solve the problem that you're looking to solve, and that is just a common characteristic of people who have built their own companies. Is I just want to find the shortest path between where I am and where I'm going, or where I want to go, and I'm willing to put aside perfectionism. I'm willing to put aside how I think it should go or how I think it should be. To just kind of solve this immediate next thing in front of me. And so at every stage, it was, well, I need to meet a I need to meet technical co-founders. Let me just talk to everybody I know. What's kind of the most immediate accessible thing? Yes, I could have gone and gotten a, computer science degree at MIT if they would have let me in, if they were going to. But that was maybe the like perfect way, but that was not going to help me in the short term. And it was going to take me way longer. And there are people who were way better at it than I was. And so it just so happened that at every kind of one of those decision points, the accelerators came around and were meaningful. So with the New Venture Challenge, it was, hey, I'm already going to get my MBA as a hedge to kind of this career switch that I'm doing, but they already have this amazing program. Let me go ahead and participate in it. With Plug and Play, it was to meet my co-founders and to kind of build the network. And then about a year after Plug and Play, we participated in Founders Factory. And their main value proposition was their partnership with big corporates like L'Oreal. And it just so happened that at our time, we needed great customers who were willing to not just buy from us, but actually partner with us to build the solution hand in hand. And so that was, at that time, that was exactly what we needed and why we decided to work with them. And so were it not for my clear understanding of what the accelerator could add, just like bringing on a co-founder, right? It's like, what did that accelerator bring to the table? I don't think I would have wanted to do it, but it just had to time with the next most immediate problem that we needed to solve.
Wasn't that interesting? I love the concept of effectual logic. Find the shortest and easiest route to solving the problem in front of you. It's obviously a useful concept for innovation and entrepreneurship, but I think for life in general, there's no need to make things super complicated for ourselves. If you've been inspired by this conversation and you want to launch a tech venture too, then check out the Fundraising for Non-Technical Founders workshop that I'm doing on the 19th of September. A third of the seats have already gone. So if you want to learn the system that I use to raise $1 million from investors as a non-technical founder, then sign up now on techforontechies.co/fundraising-workshop, and the link is in the show notes. And my dear smart people, if you are loving what you're learning, because who wouldn't, come and join us as a member at Tech for Non-Techies. Our membership is your guide in the jargon-filled world of tech. We have live sessions and masterclasses with expert teachers, entrepreneurs, and investors. You also have coaching sessions with me and learning notes on key aspects of the tech sector like AI, product management, and the app economy, all written in a way that smart non-techies like you and me can actually understand. Our members include alumni of Harvard, Oxford, and the University of Chicago, of course, and people who are buying companies, building businesses, and leading innovation. And this is pretty epic. And honestly, I am so proud of my community. So join us. If you want to join us, check us out on techforontechies.co/membership. That's it for now, my dears. Stay smart, and I will speak to you next week. Ciao.